This is often something that happened back when I was 19. Amid that time period, I lived at domestic with my guardians, and I worked at the nearby Dollar Tree. I was a part-time representative, and would more often than not work any place from 2 to 4 evenings per week, regularly night shifts, numerous of them closing. Our store was for the most part lovely calm, and when we closed, we as a rule as it were had 1 or 2 workers working. I keep in mind that one night, after a lovely normal move, I came domestic and was eating some time recently bed. That night in specific, I had gotten off a small some time recently near, which was 10 p.m. My co-worker had bolted the entryways and stuff, so it was approximately 10:30 at this point. Both my guardians said great night to me and headed off to bed. I was having a few pizza and sitting within the living room, observing something on TV. After this, I was reaching to go to bed myself. I was beautiful tired from the long day. Presently, our living room is at the front conclusion of the house. There's a huge window that looks out to the front yard, and you'll be able to see the driveway as well. As I was sitting there on the love seat, I saw headlights through the window, as on the off chance that some person was turning into our garage. I didn't know who it can be. My more youthful brother was 16 and had his permit at the time of the story, but he was domestic and in his room playing video recreations. I turned around and looked out the window. I saw a car pulling into the garage that looked to be a littler car and was a dim colour. The car ceased at the back of the carport, and shockingly, the headlights at that point turned off. This was a small frightening, to say the slightest. I kept observing to see in the event that anyone would get out, but for likely 2 or 3 minutes no one did. I seemed to tell that the car was still running. At that point, the car supported out of the carport and drove off. I figured that somebody was either misplaced or had the off-base address or something. Perhaps they fair needed to turn around and turned off the lights so as not to sparkle them at our house. I proceeded observing TV and forgot almost it. I kind of got snared onto the TV appear that I was observing, and I wasn't truly as tired as I had been fair minutes prior. Likely an hour or so went by. By presently it was nearly midnight. I was still sitting there on the love seat, and I listened to the car coming from exterior. I looked and saw a car pulling into the carport once more. It was the same car as some time recently. Presently, this was truly unusual. By this time, the car's motor turned off. My heart began to defeat a small quicker when it did. At that point, I listened to entryway open and saw someone begin to induce out. I moved from where I was. I needed to form beyond any doubt that whoever it was didn't see me, which our front entryway was bolted. I moved over and absent from the window, and saw that the entryway was, in truth, bolted. At that point, whoever was there made it to the front step. When they did, they attempted opening the entryway. It was truly stunning to me, and I went to the window to see who it was. I was cautious not to let them see me, and I saw a man standing there. He was a greater fellow with truly long, dull and wavy hair. His hair went past his shoulders, and I'd never seen him some time recently. This truly creeped me out, and I ran to my parents' room and thumped on their entryway. In the meantime, I didn't listen any thumping at our front entryway from the fellow who was there. It appeared like he had, as it were, attempted to enter. After a minute or so, my father got up and inquired me what was going on. I told him about the fellow at the front step, and my father went over to examine. When we got back to the living room, in spite of the fact that the man wasn't there any longer, I looked out the front window, and his car was gone too. Still, I was perplexed that he would return. My father checked around the house, but there was no sign of anyone, so after that, I went to bed. Nothing else happened that night. The another day, in spite of the fact that I worked once more at the Dollar Tree, it was one of my ordinary shifts, which was 4 to 10 p.m, and to begin with, things were kind of active. I was working with 2 other workers. That before long turned to 1 other worker, and as the night went on, things as it were got calmer. At that point, at almost 9 p.m. or so, with the store being greatly calm, my co-worker cleared out. I would be closing the store this evening since my co-worker had done it the past night. Amid the ultimate hour, I as it were review one lady shopping for a couple of minutes, and after that she cleared out. That's until likely 9:30. At that point, I saw a man walking into the store. When I saw him, my jaw dropped. I thought that I recognized him from something, and after that I realized what it was. He was an enormous fellow with long, dim and wavy hair. Was it the man who was at my house final night? I looked out into the stopping part and saw a littler car, rather like the one that had been in our carport. This made me amazingly apprehensive. I was all alone interior the store with him. I considered calling my co-worker and inquiring her to come back, but I'd chosen not to. I attempted to play it cool. Perhaps it was fairer coincidence. Perhaps this fellow didn't know that it was my house final night, or perhaps he didn't know that I worked here. He appeared to be strolling around the store, but I couldn't tell precisely where he was. The fellow was out of my locate for perhaps 5 minutes. At that point, I saw him show up again towards the front. He wasn't progressing to purchase anything though. Anti-fare cleared out. I was happy to see this man walk back out to his car and get interior, but he didn't drive absent. I kept an eye on him, and I trusted that he would take off. When a small more time went by, and we didn't get any more clients, I decided to bolt up and fare take off. I needed to urge domestic and absent from this fellow. I rapidly strolled through the store and made beyond any doubt that everything was fine and no one else was there. I didn't bother to organize any of the racks and I went to bolt up. When I have to be the entryways, the guy's car was still there within the stopping parcel. After I had wrapped up and was almost to walk to my car, I realized that I would need to walk past him. I was stopped towards the back of the part, and the fellow was over from me, but closer to the store. There were other stores exceptionally nearby within the shopping centre, but within the parking parcel space for Dollar Tree, it was fair our 2 vehicles. I decided I would fair go for it and start strolling to my car, but I took no more than 5 steps. Sometime recently, I saw and listened the entryway begin to open to the man's car. Right away, I turned around and started strolling down the walkway range in front of the store. There were a number of other stores associated to the Dollar Tree, and I all of a sudden had the thought to go interior one of them. I would feel much safer if I might do that, but the primary few stores were closed. In the meantime, as I strolled, I seen the man strolling presently behind me. He was a conventional ways back, but unquestionably taking after me. I didn't bother to see behind me at all. There was a Target store that showed up to likely still be open. The stopping parcel had a better than average sum of cars in it. When I got closer, I saw some person strolling in, and I felt much way better. Before long, I had made it to the Target. The man was still strolling behind me at around the same taking after remove. After strolling interior Target, the man taken after me in. I'd chosen to begin strolling up and down the paths. As I did this, I got out my phone and texted my mother. In the meantime, the man was trailing me ways back wherever I would go. My mother texted me back, saying that she might come and choose me up. I thought of attempting to get back to my car and that isolated part of the stopping parcel. I didn't need to hazard it. I inquired my mother in the event that she's seen, and she said that she would be there in approximately 10 minutes. In the meantime, I had to keep strolling all around up and down the walkways of Target. Each time I got into an unused range, I would see the man a ways back. I kept looking at my phone over and over, trusting that my mother would be there as of now. At final, she told me that she was out front within the stopping part. I began strolling to the front conclusion of the store, and the man was still behind me. He was possibly around 40 feet back or so, in case I had to guess. When I neared to the entryways and they opened, I might see my mom's car. That's when I began running. I sprinted for her vehicle, and I got interior as quick as I may. We both saw the man strolling out of Target, and my mother rapidly drove away. We were a great separate from where the man's car was, and we were able to make it back domestic all right without being taken after. When we got domestic, I gave my keys to my father, and my mother drove him to my car so that he might bring it back to our house. When they got back to my car, fortunately the man was gone. I remained up late that night, trusting that the man wouldn't go to our house once more, and fortunately he didn't. Since that encounter, I never saw him after that. I realized that he likely saw me working that to begin with night that he appeared up at my house. I just hadn't seen him at all. I must have not taken note or recalled him. I certainly did when he entered the store that another night, in spite of the fact that. To begin out, this story takes but a number of a long time back. I'm a female and was still a minor at the time and looked it. I went to the Dollar Tree with my incredible close relative. When we were there, she told me that I soon go around the store and choose out 5 things, and she would purchase them for me. I started by looking at the stuffed animals, since I truly needed to get one for my cat to play with. As I was looking through them, I taken note a man a bit more seasoned than me, at slightest mid-20s, looking at me. He was likely almost 10 feet absent. I didn't truly think anything of it at the time, so I kept on discover a stuffed creature for my cat. I at long last found a little blue teddy bear that would be idealized for her. I looked at a handful more things within the toy passageway, and as I was around there, I turned to see the man once more. He'd taken note that I saw him and gotten the closest thing to him and imagined to see at it. It was beautiful odd, but I didn't need to act as on the off chance that I was frightened, so I fair went to a diverse path. I can't keep in mind which one it was precisely, likely one of the nibble paths, but I once more saw the man who was still kind of keeping his remove. I was browsing around, but I had the thought to test in case he really was taking after me or not, so I went down the feminine hygiene passageway, and beyond any doubt sufficient, the man taken after me down there, all whereas he was attempting to keep his separate. Do not freeze, I was saying to myself. I ought to have gone and found my close relative once more right at that point, and there, but being the imbecilic kid that I was, I fair looked around the store for more things. After likely approximately 5 or 10 minutes, all whereas he was still taking after me, but keeping a remove, I saw my close relative once more and showed her the 5 items that I picked out. I think it was a few stickers, a match of socks, a few sweet, and the teddy bear for my cat. The man at last halted taking after me, after I was back shopping with my close relative. Looking back at that presently, I seem to have effortlessly been seized or something due to not finding my close relative promptly, as the store wasn't exceptionally swarmed, so there was no one around to see. Gratefully, him taking after me was all that happened, and it might have been so much more regrettable than it was. This has still been the scariest thing to ever happen to me. Usually the story of something truly scary that happened to me, whereas shopping many a long time prior. I went to a Dollar Common store within the town I work in after I got off work to choose up a couple of family things. I truly like shopping at those stores. They're as a rule not exceptionally swarmed and are a great put to get basic things since they have truly great costs. I've been interior for some minutes and as of now got most of the things that I required. When I went into the walkway for the final of what I required, I noticed there was a man fair standing within the centre of it, pacing back and forward, chattering a few kind of hogwash. His dress were greatly grimy and his pants and hoodie were both full of gaps. He had his hood up over his head, so I truly didn't get a great see at his confront, but I may see that he had an unkempt whiskers. I had to go around him and couldn't offer assistance, but take note he noticed unpleasant. I'm not one to judge individuals, but the scent was fair as well awful, and indeed made me choke a small. The man fair gave off a terrible vibe generally as well. There was music playing within the store, and all of a sudden, the man randomly started singing in conjunction with it. He wasn't singing beside the words, but was kind of chuckling to the tune of the melody, whereas singing at the same time. It was by distant the foremost irregular thing I'd ever seen anybody do. I didn't know who in their right intellect would act like that in open, but I fair brushed it off like anything and attempted to wrap up my shopping. The man kept doing it and was presently moving to the music as he got closer to me. I'd chosen I'd go to the following path over to put a few remove between myself and the man. I trusted that in the event that I fair disregarded him, he would either get bored of it or discover somebody else to bother. It was turning into a very scrappy circumstance, but I didn't think it was worth standing up to the fellow over it. I murdered a few time by fair looking over everything within the passageway and thought perhaps the man would be gone, so I seen go back for what I required. At that point I saw the man once more, and he was following another client who was a middle-aged man. The fellow was still singing and dancing to the music. I seemed tell the other client was getting irritated and attempting to jettison the man as well. At that point, the guy practically inclined over to the other customer's bear and was singing as boisterous as he seemed. It startled the other client, and he turned around and said, "What's your issue, you weirdo?" That must have set off a trigger inside the man, and he at that point began yelling and reviling at me at the beat of his lungs. The other client fair looked at the man with a shocked see on his confront. It appeared like he was getting prepared to battle the man when he begun beating his chest like a gorilla and shouted. The other client shouted and took off running absent from him. I observed as the man chased him all around all through the store, in and out of passageways, and thumping things off the racks as they went. I couldn't accept this was really happening. I didn't know in the event that the fellow was tall on something, inebriated, or had a mental well-being issue, but the truth that he had totally misplaced his mind was plain to see. His temperament had gone totally 180. The other customer ran in front of the aisle I was in, with the insane man still after him. At that point, the insane man stumbled and fell when his foot caught on the foot of a rack. He'd taken note me when he got back up, and after that pointed at me. He made a clamour that I do not indeed know how to portray, and I would have thought a human couldn't make such a sound. I shouted and ran for it. The insane fellow picked up a thing in a box off the rack and hurled it at me. Fortunately, it didn't come any place near to hitting me and fair fell to the floor, which likely broke anything was interior. As I was running out of there, I came over the store director, who came to explore all the commotion. He inquired, what within the blue earth was going on in here? Justifiably irate, almost the unsettling influence, I said there's a crazy man who's been attempting to assault another client and myself. Fair at that point, the insane man saw us. He made that horrendous noise again and charged us. The chief said to urge out of his store presently. That didn't stage the man at all, and he kept going towards us at full speed. The supervisor picked up his foot, and as the fellow come to him, he delivered a karate-style kick to the insane man, which caught him square within the chest. It dropped the insane man and thumped him out for many minutes. The supervisor inquired me if I was a firm, and I said that I thought I was, still in shock from what had fair happened. He at that point told me to form a run for the exit, which he was getting to empty the complete store, as well as call the police. I didn't squander any time in making a run for the exit. Whereas I was on the way out, I listened the director report over the store intercom for everybody to it would be ideal if you empty the store immediately for your possessed security. When I got exterior, I saw a few of police cars come flying into the stopping parcel. It turned out the other client, the insane man chased, got out after the insane man set his sights on me and called the police himself. It was a beautiful, huge town, so their police division was able to urge officers to the scene super fast. A couple of other clients came running out of the store aside the workers and director. The officers got out, and the supervisor told them the insane man was still interior wrecking everything. We may see impressions of him through the glass, running around in there and laying waste to the store. It looked like a tornado had tore through the place. The officers ran interior, and some other police cars arrived at the scene as they entered, along with an emergency vehicle. The moment wave of officers ran in to assist, whereas the paramedics checked on everybody to see in the event that anyone required therapeutic consideration. We all observed and held up for them to come out with the fellow. Meanwhile, the supervisor kept apologizing to everybody approximately the whole difficulty, and made beyond any doubt that no one was harmed. I was glad that he was there to put a halt to the crazy man's frenzy long sufficient for everyone to urge out securely. It took a whereas, but all the officers at long last came out dragging the insane man with them. He was still attempting to battle the officers and making his aggravating claimers. They had put a part of restrictions on him and put a spit hood over his comfort as well. After they finally got him within the back of one of their cars, the officers came over to form beyond any doubt we were all a firm. They said that when they found the insane man interior, he was pooing within the center of one of the paths. The insane man even tried to fight the officers, and they finished up having to utilize a taser on him many times to form the capture. They moreover found that he vandalized the restroom by stuffing a bunch of canned paper and paper towels within the latrine and sink, making them both flood. One officer said the insane man was most likely on overwhelming drugs, and that's what made him act like he did. We all gave the officers our explanations for what happened, and our contact data in the event that they had any more questions. The supervisor went back interior with a few of the officers to urge the film from the store observation cameras and to examine all the harm. The other capturing officers drove the man out of the stopping part and took the insane fellow absent. We all felt too bad for them, since it couldn't have been an awfully pleasant ride with him within the car. I decided I might as well disregard around my shopping, and I went home to undertake to gather myself. I was still shaken up from the entire thing. I'd taken after the news for another few days, and found out the guy's title, which he was in truth beneath the impact of drugs when he came into the store. He was being held in the Townsend prison until his court date. I never listened what finished up happening to him after that, but I was fair happy that he was in custody where he had a place and couldn't harm anybody. Ideally, he got the assistance that he required, whereas he was there as well. The Dollar Common had to be closed for a couple of days to clean up the harm, and so the workers might recuperate from the injury. I never have gone back to that Dollar Common since that occurrence, and I do not think I ever will. I'm beyond any doubt that the man was prohibited from ever going into that store once more. It fair brings up awful recollections for me, and I couldn't offer assistance, but think that sometime in the not-so-distant future the crazy man would return to look for some kind of shocking reprisal. The whole thing was a very traumatizing experience for me. It's made me a part more cautious at whatever point I go out shopping ever since then. It fair goes to appear you that you never know what individuals are capable of, and how rapidly things can take a turn fair going approximately your day-by-day schedule. My title is Amanda, and this happened many a long time prior when I was more youthful. Amid that time, I lived with my two brothers, my sister, and my guardians. We were hanging out one night, and between all of us, we would run out of things rapidly. My kin and I were hungry, and me being one of the more seasoned kin, and 17 at the time, advertised to go to the store. Everybody else was active doing their claim thing, so I cleared out the house and got interior my car. I was as it were arranging on getting a couple of things. I would not be gone for as well long. The closest store to us was a Family Dollar that was likely less than 5 minutes absent. I'd chosen to go there since it was so near, and furthermore, the costs were truly cheap. By this time, it was perhaps 8 p.m. or so. I ought to Family Dollar, and I went interior. Once within the store, I saw a number of other individuals shopping. I made my way to the nibble passageway and began looking around. There were some things that my kin had particularly inquired for. For illustration, I know someone needed the TGI Fridays potato skins. I was looking around and having a troublesome time finding them when a man drew nearer me. He said, "Require offer assistance finding anything." Fair out of intuitive, I said, "No, much obliged." I knew that what I was searching for was adjacent and in this passageway. The fellow at that point began strolling absent. I hadn't indeed looked at him, but as he cleared out the path, I did. I realized that the man didn't indeed work there. He was fair wearing a t-shirt and jeans. A small bazaar, but anything. I went back to shopping. I found many things and put them within the shopping bushel that I had. At that point, I made my way to the following walkway over. I begun out being the as it were individual in that aisle, but before long the same man drew nearer me once more. This time he strolled almost 5 feet away from me or less, and fair kind of gazed in my course. I kept looking at the items on the racks, until I seemed tell that he was gazing at me. At that point I looked over. The man was looking at my bushel, and he began saying the items that I had in it. Chips, Path Blend, Coca-Cola, fun night arranged. I fair kind of snickered, and said I was fair picking up a few snacks. The man inquired me on the off chance that I lived around here. I said sort of. By the way, this guy was much more seasoned than me, and gave me a sort of unpleasant feeling promptly. He inquired me some of more questions, like what neighbourhood I lived in and who I lived with. I found the questions to be odd, and I gave as fundamental reactions as I could. The man inquired me what else I was getting, and I said a couple of other things. I'd chosen to walk out of that path since it appeared just like the discussion had sort of finished, but the man at that point strolled with me to the next aisle. It was really awkward, and I couldn't even think of what else I wanted to induce any longer. I think I gotten like 1 or 2 more things, and after that fair sort of strolled around. The fellow would not take off me alone. After unbalanced hush, he inquired me on the off chance that I required a ride domestic or anything. I told him no, I drove myself there. The fellow at that point inquired me in the event that I needed to hang out with him. I told him no, much appreciated. I headed to the checkouts at that point. I fair needed to urge out of there and absent from that crawl. When I did, he began to take after me to the checkout. The awkwardness was incredible. At long last, I made it to the checkout range, and the fellow was still standing right another to me as in the event that we had gone there together. He indeed advertised to pay for my things, but I said no, and I paid myself. After that, I begun to take off, but I had an awful feeling just like the fellow was progressing to take after me domestic. I happened to take note that there were a couple of washrooms adjacent. I strolled over to one, and the man kind of halted when he realized I was getting to utilize the restroom. When I got interior, I bolted the entryway. I didn't have to be utilized the washroom, but I fair needed to induce absent from the fellow. I remained in there for a whereas. I didn't truly have a range, but I thought possibly in the event that I was in there for a long time he would take off. I fair went on my phone in there and held up for like 15 minutes. When I came out, the man wasn't there any longer. I saw the lady working at the counter that I had checked out at. She looked sort of concerned. I went over to her and inquired her on the off chance that the fellow was still there who had been standing close me. The lady said that he strolled towards the back of the store. She said that he was fair standing around the washrooms, and she inquired him in the event that he required of her assistance with anything. The fellow at that point fair said no and strolled away. She asked in case I knew him. I told her no, and I told her how he wouldn't leave me alone. She said she seemed kind of telling fair as we were talking. The man begun to come back in to locate from the back of the store. He strolled over to me and said, "Ready to go?" The worker inquired the man if he indeed knew me, and he said yes. She at that point told him that she knew he was lying. The lady undermined to call the police right there on the off chance that the fellow didn't take off, and fortunately he really did. After he was gone, I was able to drive back domestic and make it securely, and I'm happy to say I never saw that fellow once more. Thank you for watching the video. Make sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel, Midnight Mysteria, for more amazing horror stories.